Hi, this is Midwest Katie. Welcome to my kitchen. Let's see what you need to start canning. The most important step in any canning project is organization. Get your things laid out, get them clean, double check everything, and then begin canning. First and foremost is a good canning guide. Ball Blue Book is a good place to start. I'd also recommend putting food by or a printout from your local extension office. Go over it every time you can. The next thing you're going to need is a canner. This is my pressure canner. I have a Presto 23 quart pressure canner and cooker. I never use it as a pressure cooker. I have a separate one for that. I only use this for canning. I want to keep it clean. I want to keep it in good working order. I don't want any fats or anything to build up in it. So I only use it for pressure canning. A pressure canner is for low acid foods like vegetables and meats. You're going to need a water bath canner for other things. Be sure to read your canner's guide and the instruction booklet that comes with it and refer to it every time you can. Don't just rely on your memory or what somebody says on the internet. Keep your canner in good condition. Replace the rims and rings and gauges regularly. I wash my canner thoroughly and often after each use, and I wipe it out with vinegar water to keep any minerals from building up in the vents. I also store it right back in the original box with the original packing materials, and it keeps it dent free and scratch free. This is going to last me for a long time. This is an investment. I'm going to keep in good working order and take good care of it. You're going to be feeding your family with the products of your canner. Keep it in good working order and there won't be anything to worry about. It should last you for years and years. This is a hot water bath canner. You'll use this for many other things besides hot water bath canning. Hot water bath canning is different from pressure canning. You can do high acid foods and some fruits, pickles, tomatoes, things like that in a hot water bath canner. I also use my hot water bath canner to boil and sterilize my cooking utensils, my canning jars in that it's a nice big vessel to do something like that. And then you can use it also to keep your jars hot and ready before they go into the canner. And we'll talk about that a little later and in another video. This is an enamel one. I've had it for several years. I had it before I had my pressure canner. Keep it clean, keep it rinsed out with vinegar to keep any minerals from building up in it. I've had to replace the rack that comes with it once because that got a little rusty. But it should last you years and years. Next, let's talk about canning jars. Refer to your canning resources guide for the size of jar you'll need for the food that you're putting up. Always inspect, wash, and sterilize every jar every time you can. Use the size of jar that makes sense for what you're canning. Don't can quarts if there's only 2 people in your family. You're not going to want to open a quart of corn every time you want corn. I use I'm Still Working's mantra. Use hot jars, hot lids, and hot rings, and hot food. We'll talk about the things you need to do that later. And I always prepare a few extra jars. There's nothing more frustrating than getting to the end of a canning session and realizing that you have 2 more pounds of chicken that you can put in to can and you don't have enough hot jars ready. It's okay to use used jars if you get them from people. Like I had somebody who was moving and they didn't want to take their canning jars with them and gave them to me. But just make sure they're inspected really well. Check them for chips and cracks. Don't use old mayonnaise jars to can. Those aren't canning jars. You can store leftover food in your refrigerator in those, but they're not proper canning jars. This is going to be food that feeds your family. Use your head when you're picking out canning jars and keep them clean and in good order. This is my canning toolkit, my mini canning toolkit. It has the canning toolkit that you can get anywhere you get canning supplies. That has the funnel, the jar lifter, the magnetic wand and the debubbler in it. And it also has an extra set of smallmouth lids and largemouth lids and a few extra rings for both in it. When I need to do a quick canning session, I need just a couple of things. I just pull this out instead of getting my big box of hundreds of rings and hundreds of lids out. I don't get all that out at one time. If I just need a few extra things, I pull that out. I keep that handy. I keep it with all my canning supplies, and the things that are inside of it I use just for canning. I don't want to have to go hunting for extra pieces of things, a measuring cup or a spoon that I use just for canning. It's all right there and handy. The more organized you are, the quicker and the more pleasant your canning sessions will be. Besides the lids and rings, these are some of the things that are in my mini canning bag. I have a funnel. That funnel is sitting inside of a 1-cup metal measuring cup. I accidentally set it in there one day and I thought, wow, this is going to keep this from tipping over. So I keep that right in there, and every time I need to set down my funnel, it goes right into that in my canning session, and it keeps my counter and my space clean, and it keeps it from tipping over. It's been real handy. I keep in there a 1 tablespoon and 1 teaspoon measuring spoons, just for this purpose. I don't want to have to go hunting for them every time I do a canning session, or take the ones on the ring apart and take out what I need. I keep those 2 in there. I got them for both for 1 nickel at a yard sale. Canning supplies are a great find at yard sales. Also, here you'll see the magnetic wand that you use to pick up your lids and rings out of the hot water when you get ready to can. Also in my mini canning kit, I keep my jar lifter. This one's nice because it has a rubber like gasket type thing around the bottom, and it seems to grip it pretty good. I like this one. Also keep ready to go a bowl, and you can see I've got a canning jar sitting in it, that as I'm filling each jar, and I'm not in an assembly line canner, I can 1 jar at a time. I set it in the bowl, I set the hot jar in it, put in hot food, and then put in a hot lid and a hot ring. That little bowl keeps me from spilling onto my work surface when I'm canning, and it's been real handy that way. I don't have to stop and clean up my counter if I have a little spill. The plate is also where I keep the jar lifter on. There's no use going through all the trouble of cleaning all the other equipment and then setting your jar lifter down on a dirty counter or on a dirty towel. Keep it on that plate, and it's only anything that's going to be on it is food anyway that's going to go in there. So that's a good habit to get into. For each canning session, you're also going to need towels and hot pans. They don't have to be new, but they do have to be impeccably clean. I keep a supply as they get a little raggedy around the edge, and I might not want to put them out for company. I put them in the canning box, and I have them ready to go every time I want to can. Make sure you have some good quality hot pans. You're going to be working with some really hot lids and hot canning jars. Make sure you have some, take some safety precautions that way. These are the other utensils I use almost every other time I do a canning session. I have a ladle. This one happens to be plastic, and it holds 8 ounces. It's nice for measuring what I need to put into a jar. I will always use a slotted spoon to lift food out of boiling liquids, or tongs to lift things out of boiling liquids. Also, you'll see there some wooden skewers. That was a suggestion from Susan from I'm Still Working to use as a debubbler. I broke my debubbler one time during a canning session, and now I use those exclusively because if I'm canning something like beets or cherries or blueberries, something that's going to stain, I just throw them away when I'm finished. Another word about your canning utensils: when you're sterilizing your jars and your hot water bath candle, put all that stuff in there too. It doesn't pay to not be safe. You might think everything is clean, but I know if I boil that stuff for 10 minutes, it will be sterilized and I don't have to worry about it. Except for some delicate fruits like apples or cherries or something like that, I always hot pack everything that I'm canning. And to do that, you're going to need a cooking pot that's non-reactive. And non-reactive means stainless steel or enamel lined. I use an 8-quart stainless steel one. I've had this almost since I've been married, so like 25 years. Take good care of it and it'll last forever. For each canning session, you're going to need some large bowls and colanders. You're going to be working with a lot of food at one time, so make sure you have some great big bowls, and have enough bowls ahead of time clean and ready to go. Today I'm canning white meat chicken, so I'm going to need one bowl for the raw chicken that I cut up and the other one for the hot cooked chicken. I don't want to, cross-contaminate and put it into the other dirty bowl. So I have everything ready to go. For most canning sessions, you're going to need a cutting board to prepare your food and knives and a knife sharpener. Buy the best knives you can afford and learn how to keep them sharp. Take a class on knife sharpening if you have to. There are a lot of good videos for that out on YouTube too. Keep several of these small plastic cutting boards on hand, because if something happens and you don't want to cross-contaminate your foods, you have one ready. You're also going to need some vinegar and a good supply of paper towels to keep on hand. You'll use this to wipe the rims of your canning jars after you fill them and before you put on your hot lids and ring. Even if you have the tiniest amount of fat or something sticky on your rim, before you put on your lid, you're not going to get a good seal, and that's going to make sure you have a jar fail when you finish your canning session. I've talked a lot about cleanliness during this whole video and the importance to have a safe canning session. Don't forget to clean out your sink before you start too. Two things that make my canning sessions a little more enjoyable: I always have on hand a great timer. I use the one on my stove because it has a nice loud alarm, and sometimes when you've got a boiling pot or a canner going, you can't hear a tiny little timer or forget to look at your watch and say, oh my gosh, I missed it. So make sure you have a good timer available that you can see the numbers counting down on. And always have a good drink available. You're going to get hot and thirsty. Have it ready to go, so if you've got food on your hands, you don't have to stop and get yourself a drink in the middle of a canning session. The last two things I use during a canning session are a chair that I park right in front of my stove and my canner's notebook. I park a chair right in front of my canner once I'm able to start the timing, and I make sure that my temperature is right where it needs to be to keep my pressure at my 11 pounds that I need to in this case for my chicken that I'm canning today. It takes just a few minutes for a pressure to go too high or to dip below that 11 pounds pressure, and I have to start my timing all over again. It's better to be safe than sorry, and park your nose right in front of it. That way you can adjust the temperature as you go. I also have my canner's notebook, and I might do a video on that later about how I keep that organized. It tells what I canned for the day, what I paid for the product, how long it took me, did I run out of jars, what I do differently the next time. It's a nice resource that I have to look back at it. Thanks for watching my video today on things you need to get started canning. Remember, I'm just a gal on the internet. Make sure you educate yourself with proper resources, and I hope you learned something today. Thanks.